The chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel burned above Manhattan's most powerful guests as Billionaire CEO Connor Hale lowered himself onto one knee. Cameras flashed across the ballroom. Reporters pushed closer. Investors, politicians, and celebrities watched as he opened a velvet ring box before Jade Ellison, the visibly pregnant woman in a silver gown standing at the center of his new life. "Jade," Connor said proudly, "you've given me everything I ever wanted. Will you?" The grand doors opened before he could finish. The sound cut through the room, and every conversation stopped. Rowan Miller stepped into the ballroom. Connor's ex-wife, the woman he had publicly humiliated, divorced, and blamed for every failure in their marriage, stood beneath the doorway lights in a simple gown. She wore no extravagant diamonds and made no dramatic entrance, yet the entire room turned toward her. Connor's face lost its color. Jade's smile disappeared, and her hand tightened around the ring box. Everyone recognized Rowan. They also remembered the story Connor had told after their divorce, that she was unstable, jealous, infertile, and incapable of standing beside a successful man. But Rowan did not look broken. She looked calm, powerful, and completely unafraid. Then 3 children entered behind her. The room froze as Connor stared at their faces because each child looked exactly like him. She glided into the ballroom with a calmness that made people step aside instinctively. In her hand was a slim folder, black, unmarked, dangerous, the kind of thing capable of ending careers, marriages, or entire corporations. Connor's voice cracked first. "Rowan, what are you doing here?" She didn't answer. Not yet. Marcus Lell, the rival CEO who'd been quietly observing from the shadows, narrowed his eyes as Rowan approached. He had seen powerful men fall before, but never like this. Never with this kind of precision. Rowan finally reached the center of the room. She looked at Connor, then Jade, then the glittering crowd who once whispered about her humiliation. "I wasn't planning to come," she said softly. But some truths shouldn't stay buried. A ripple of dread swept across the ballroom. When she opened the folder, even the orchestra stopped playing. And then Rowan revealed the first page. The entire room froze. Rowan Miller used to believe life rewarded those who worked hard, stayed honest, and loved with their whole heart. For years, she lived that way, pouring herself into her marriage, her career, and the man she thought she understood better than anyone. But life had a cruel sense of humor, especially in Manhattan, where power rewrote truth and money rewrote history. Before the scandal, Rowan was a senior data analyst at Sterling Capital, a glass tower that pierced the clouds above Midtown. She earned her place there, not through connections, not through charm, but through relentless discipline. She'd spend nights hunched over a glowing monitor, her cold Starbucks cup forgotten beside her, solving problems no one else wanted to touch. Her work saved the company millions. Her predictions were praised in board meetings, yet people barely remembered her name. She didn't mind. Hard workers rarely do. But loving Connor Hale was her one naive mistake. Connor swept her off her feet at a charity tech gala 6 years ago. He was already a rising star in the corporate world. Tailored suits, confident voice, a presence that filled every room he entered. When he looked at Rowan, he made her feel like she was the only person in a city of 8 million. Their romance blossomed fast. Dinners overlooking the Hudson River, weekends in Boston, late-night conversations where he swore she was the only one who ever made him feel grounded. Rowan believed him. She believed him when he proposed. She believed him when he promised a future filled with family. She believed him when he said her hard work inspired him. But the lies didn't fall apart all at once. They cracked slowly like ice under strain. First came the rumors that she was too focused on work to be a good partner, then whispers that she was emotionally unstable. A story Connor subtly fed to friends, then to colleagues. Then the cruelest lie of all, that she was infertile. She only learned about that last rumor when a coworker tiptoed around her with pity in his eyes. She'd laughed it off until she realized Connor had been the source. At the time, she couldn't understand why he was tearing down the woman he claimed to love. Now she knew he needed to destroy Rowan's reputation before he replaced her. Her breaking point came the night she walked into his office to surprise him with takeout, only to find Jade sitting on his desk, laughing, glowing, perfectly comfortable in a place Rowan once felt safe. Connor didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. "It's better this way," he had said. "You were holding me back, everyone." 3 months later, Rowan's life was in shambles. Rumors spread like wildfire. Opportunities vanished. Friends drifted away. Even her own company questioned her emotional stability, quietly moving her off major accounts. That was when Marcus Lell appeared. He didn't introduce himself as a savior. He simply offered her a seat at a quiet cafe across from Sterling Capital and said, "I know what Connor did and you're not crazy. He's hiding something. Something big. It's numb." Rowan didn't know whether to trust him. But Marcus gave her something she hadn't felt in months. The sense that she wasn't alone. And now, standing in the plaza ballroom with the world staring at her, she finally understood. Marcus had known this moment was coming, because the truth she carried tonight wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the life Connor stole. And as Rowan lifted her eyes toward the crowd, she felt the shift in the room. Something enormous was coming next. Something Connor could never prepare for. Manhattan at night was a world built on illusions. Glass towers pretending to touch the heavens. Men pretending to be gods and fortunes growing out of thin air. To outsiders, it was glamorous. To insiders, it was a battlefield where reputations rose and fell faster than the stock ticker, running across Times Square at midnight. Rowan had lived in this world long enough to understand one truth. The higher the floor, the colder the air. The plaza ballroom tonight was proof of that. Gold-trimmed walls, a string quartet playing soft, expensive music, servers weaving through the crowd with trays of champagne flutes so delicate they seemed ready to shatter if anyone breathed wrong. Every conversation had the same tone, restrained, strategic, practiced. People smiled with their mouths, but never with their eyes. These were Manhattan's kingmakers, the ones who decided which startup would soar, which CEO would crumble, and which scandal would be buried before dawn. Connor thrived here. He was made for it. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and the arrogance of a man who believed he'd never face consequences. Rowan remembered the nights she attended events like this as his wife. She used to stand beside him, invisible, behind his spotlight. While he strategized with investors, she'd linger near the windows, watching taxis blur along Fifth Avenue, wondering if she'd ever belong here. In those days, she believed Connor's world was too polished for someone like her. Someone who worked hard, saved every dollar, and still felt like an outsider. But tonight, she didn't feel small. Maybe it was because she'd already hit rock bottom and survived. Maybe it was because she was done being the quiet, obedient woman Connor erased. Or maybe it was because Marcus Lell was somewhere in this room watching her with the calm certainty of a man who knew a storm was coming and that she was the one bringing it. Across the ballroom, Connor stood on the stage under the glow of 1,000 camera flashes. Jade clung to him like a trophy she planned to keep polished. Behind them loomed a banner showcasing Hale Corporation's newest expansion deal. One the entire crowd had come to celebrate. One built on lies. If only they knew what Rowan knew. She scanned the faces around her. Investors, politicians, media mogul, some familiar, some not, but all powerful enough to shift the landscape of the city with a single word. She wondered how long it would take for rumors to spread. Already people whispered behind champagne glasses, glancing at her, glancing at Connor, trying to solve a puzzle they didn't yet understand. The truth was simple. Rowan Miller wasn't supposed to be here. Yavd. His PR Yav the Devore, his PR team painted her as unstable. His lawyers buried her with paperwork. His connections squeezed her career until she had no choice but to shrink back into silence. But Manhattan had a way of turning the tables, especially when someone underestimated the wrong person. A waiter brushed past Rowan, offering a glass of champagne. She took it, not to drink, but to steady her hand. Her heartbeat matched the tempo of the quartet, slow, steady, ominous. She glanced toward the far wall and found Marcus at last. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply nodded. A silent signal, a promise, a warning. Rowan inhaled deeply because the moment she stepped forward, everything would change her life. Connor's empire, Jade's future, and the balance of power in this glittering, ruthless city. She took one step, then another. And as the crowd parted for her, someone whispered aloud the words that made the whole room freeze. Isn't that his ex-wife? Connor Hale had always been the kind of man who believed the world owed him its admiration. Even before he became CEO of Hale Corporation, he walked through life as if Manhattan itself had been built just to reflect his success. He loved the spotlight. He loved the applause. And more than anything, he loved the feeling of being untouchable. Tonight was supposed to be his masterpiece. He had curated every detail of the engagement event, the string quartet playing his favorite classical mix, the sponsor banners highlighting his new expansion deal. Even the exact moment the media would burst through the velvet ropes to capture him, proposing to Jade. He wasn't just planning a celebration. He was crafting an image. The image of a man who had traded in his unstable, ungrateful ex-wife for a younger, glowing future. A future that made him look powerful, fertile, and in control. Connor thrived on control. He'd spent years building Hale Corporation from a mid-tier tech finance company into a Wall Street darling. He used charm and interviews, intimidation behind closed doors, and strategic partnerships that often skirted the edge of legality. His board worshipped him. Investors chased him. His name alone could move stock prices by noon, and the only person who had ever threatened that control was Rowan. Rowan, with her relentless integrity. Rowan, who questioned contracts he wanted her to ignore. Rowan, who noticed inconsistencies others overlooked. Rowan, who didn't fit into the image he was crafting. He never planned to marry someone like her. She wasn't meant to be permanent. He had wanted someone polished, someone born into boardrooms and fundraisers. But somewhere along the way, Rowan became inconveniently necessary. She studied him, quieted his chaos, made him human. He resented her for that because to stay on top, Connor couldn't afford humanity. He needed to be a storm, unpredictable, feared, admired. When he met Jade, everything clicked into place. She was ambition wrapped in a designer dress. She didn't challenge him. She admired him. She didn't ask questions. She followed his lead. And when she became pregnant, Connor saw it as the final piece in the empire he was constructing, a symbol of legacy, proof that he had upgraded. And 7 Jade's pregnancy became his talking point. She gives me what Rowan never could, he'd say, crafted for sympathy. Rowan wasn't ready for family, he whispered to investors. He never expected Rowan to return. He never expected her to fight. He never expected her to hold anything powerful enough to break him, which was why when he saw her step into the ballroom tonight, his heart stopped, his throat tightened. The ring box suddenly felt like a weight he couldn't lift. He forced himself to smile, forced himself to pretend, forced himself to maintain the image. Cameras were everywhere. Investors watched every twitch of his jaw. He couldn't let them see fear. But fear was there, quiet at first, then louder under his ribs. Because Connor knew Rowan, he knew she never spoke unless she had proof. He knew she never confronted unless she was certain. And the black folder in her hand, he recognized it. He had burned that file. He had destroyed every copy. He had sworn it no longer existed. Yet there it was held by the woman he underestimated, the woman he crushed, the woman he thought he had erased. Jade noticed his sudden stiffness. "Connor, what's wrong?" she whispered. He couldn't answer because Rowan lifted her eyes and their gazes locked across the ballroom. And in that silent exchange, Connor understood one thing with chilling clarity. His life was no longer under his control. Jade Ellison had always believed she was destined for more. More glamour, more attention, more luxury than the life she grew up with in suburban Ohio. She came to New York at 22 with 2 suitcases, an unpaid internship, and a burning desire to rewrite her entire identity. And she did slowly, strategically, ruthlessly. Her beauty opened doors, but her ambition kept them from closing. She learned the rhythm of Manhattan quickly. Never pause, never falter, never let anyone see you sweat. By the time she met Connor Hale at a private fundraising dinner, she already knew the kind of man he was. Powerful, self-assured, addicted to being admired, and deeply, dangerously bored with the life he had. Jade knew exactly how to fill that void. She wasn't stupid. She knew he was married. She also knew men like Connor never left unless given something irresistible. So, she became irresistible. She listened when he complained about Rowan. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny. She wore the dresses he liked. She studied his moods, memorized his routines, learned which insecurities he hid behind that polished CEO smile. And when the pregnancy test turned positive, she thought her victory was complete. For months, Jade believed she was the new leading woman in the Hale empire. She reveled in being whispered about in private clubs and upscale cafes. Investors treated her like a future queen. PR strategists taught her how to pose beside Connor for photographs. Designers offered gowns on loan. She traded her cramped studio apartment for a condo overlooking Central Park. Everything she ever wanted was finally within reach. Tonight was supposed to seal it. The engagement ring was custom-made, the largest diamond Connor had ever purchased. She practiced the perfect, surprised yet elegant expression in her bathroom mirror for weeks. When Connor knelt tonight, she gave a flawless performance. Tears at the right moment, soft gasp, hand trembling in the perfect camera angle. She was seconds away from ascending into Manhattan royalty. And then Rowan walked in. At first, Jade told herself it didn't matter. Ex-wives always appeared bitter when replaced. But the way the entire ballroom shifted, how whispers grew, how heads turned, how even the quartet faltered made Jade's stomach twist with something unfamiliar. Fear. She tightened her grip on Connor's arm. "Why is she here?" she hissed. "She shouldn't be," Connor muttered, panic cracking through his composure. Rowan didn't look like a broken ex-wife. She didn't look jealous. She didn't even look nervous. She walked with a calm that made Jade's skin prickle. And that folder, black, slim, ominous, felt like a threat aimed directly at her future. This wasn't the desperate woman Jade had imagined. This was someone dangerous. Suddenly, Jade remembered every rumor she'd heard about Rowan before the divorce. Brilliant, meticulous, the kind of woman who noticed everything, the kind of woman who could destroy a man if she chose. Jade swallowed hard, pressing her palm protectively over her stomach. This baby, her one guarantee. Her leverage felt suddenly small. Still, she refused to show weakness. "Let her make a scene," Jade whispered, forcing confidence she didn't feel. "Everyone here knows she's unstable in Port Nain." But then Rowan lifted her gaze. Calm, controlled, piercing, and something inside Jade slipped, a crack in the facade she'd spent years perfecting. Because the look in Rowan's eyes made one thing painfully, terrifyingly clear. Jade was not the woman in control tonight. Marcus Lell had never been the type to attend public events unless absolutely necessary. He preferred quiet conference rooms, private negotiations, and back-channel phone calls that shaped the direction of entire markets. But tonight, he stood quietly at the edge of the Plaza ballroom, watching history rewrite itself in real time. Most people in Manhattan's financial world feared Connor Hale. Marcus didn't. He respected Connor's intelligence, but despised his arrogance. Underneath Connor's polished exterior, Marcus saw volatility, the kind that destroyed companies, lives, and anyone unfortunate enough to trust him. Months ago, Marcus began suspecting Hale Corporation was hiding something, a discrepancy in their international asset reports, a pattern of suspicious transfers. It was subtle, buried beneath layers of misleading paperwork. The only person who noticed the same inconsistencies was Rowan Miller. Marcus remembered their first conversation vividly. Rowan had looked exhausted but determined, her eyes red from holding back too many nights of frustration. She hadn't come to him seeking revenge. She came seeking truth. But truth has a price in Manhattan. When Marcus began digging into Hale Corporation's records, he discovered enough to know Rowan wasn't simply a discarded ex-wife. She was a casualty of a calculated cleanup. Connor smeared her reputation because she had stumbled upon evidence that could collapse the entire expansion deal he bragged about. Marcus had spent months waiting, planning, watching. He knew this night would come. So when Rowan entered the ballroom holding the black folder, Marcus exhaled slowly. She was as fearless as he hoped, and more dangerous than Connor ever expected. Across the room, he watched her scanning faces, not with fear, not with anger, with purpose. She caught sight of him. For a moment, everything else, the music, the murmurs, the glittering lights fell away. Marcus gave a single, subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement. He wasn't controlling her. He wasn't rescuing her. He was backing her, letting her know she had someone in the room who wouldn't let Connor spin the narrative again. Because Marcus had watched Connor destroy too many people on his climb upward. Rowan was the first person brave enough to stop him. A waiter passed by with a tray of champagne. Marcus ignored it. His eyes stayed locked on Rowan as she took another step toward the center of the room. Her movements were calm, but he recognized the storm building inside her. He'd seen that look before in boardrooms, in negotiations, in people who had nothing left to lose. Connor finally noticed Marcus watching. Their eyes met. Connor's jaw tightened. His posture stiffened. A flicker of panic crossed his expression, quick but unmistakable. Because if Marcus Lell was involved, everything was worse than he imagined. Jade followed Connor's stare, and spotted Marcus too. "Why is he here?" she whispered urgently. Connor didn't answer. Because Marcus Lell didn't attend social events without a reason, and if he was standing quietly observing, it meant he knew something. Marcus shifted slightly, positioning himself where he had a clear view of Rowan, Connor, and the exit routes. He wasn't here to create the drama, but he was here to make sure Rowan wasn't silenced again. Not tonight, not ever. He could feel the tension winding tighter with every second. The room was on the brink of something explosive. People sensed it, too. Conversations grew softer, glances sharper. Then Rowan reached the foot of the stage. Marcus straightened because he knew the moment she opened her mouth, Manhattan would never be the same again. And Connor Hale was about to face the one truth he couldn't bury. It didn't take long for the Plaza ballroom to shift from elegance to electric tension. Whispers moved through the air like wind snaking under a closed door, soft at first, then sharper, then impossible to ignore. Rowan's sudden appearance had shattered whatever illusion of control Connor was clinging to. At the far side of the room, a pair of board members leaned toward each other. Didn't she disappear after the divorce? I heard she had a breakdown. No, Connor said. She sabotaged one of his deals. Rowan heard every word, even if they tried to whisper. But this time, the words didn't sting. They didn't cut the way they used to. She had truth in her hand, and truth was louder than any rumor. She kept walking, heels clicking steadily on the marble floor. The deliberate rhythm echoed through the hovering silence. Even the quartet seemed uncertain whether to keep playing. A woman in a navy evening gown whispered too loudly, "Why would she come here tonight of all nights?" "Because I'm done being your ghost," Rowan thought. Meanwhile, Jade tried to maintain her composure, but panic betrayed her. People noticed. They always noticed when a woman built on confidence suddenly cracked. Jade clutched the side of her gown, eyes scanning the room for an escape route, her breath shallow. "She's doing this for attention," Jade muttered to Connor. But Connor wasn't listening. His eyes were glued to Rowan, scanning her expression for clues, searching for a weakness. He wasn't used to being surprised. He wasn't used to being vulnerable, and Rowan's presence alone was unraveling him piece by piece. A group of reporters near the stage caught sight of Rowan and immediately shifted position. Phones raised, cameras flashing. Scandal was good business, and the ex-wife crashing an engagement party. That was headline gold. One reporter whispered to another, "Get the live stream ready. Something's about to happen." Rowan didn't shy away from the cameras. For once, she didn't feel the urge to shrink or hide. She held her head high. Her breath was steady. Every step she took was a reclaiming of the dignity Connor had tried to strip away. As she passed a cluster of investors, one of them accidentally murmured too close to her ear, "If she's here with information, the expansion deal is in trouble." That was when Connor snapped. He stepped away from Jade, nearly stumbling off the small stage. His smile vanished entirely, replaced by a strained, shaky glare. "Rowan," he said sharply, "you're causing a scene." Rowan offered him a level, unshaken look. "I'm not the one who invited the press," she replied calmly. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The entire ballroom quieted at the sound of it. Jade tried to step forward, placing a protective hand on her stomach as if to command sympathy. "This is our night," she said in a trembling voice. "You're ruining everything," was Ash and Bilda. Rowan turned slightly, just enough to acknowledge her without granting her power. "Nothing I'm about to say was built by me," Rowan answered. "I'm just here to pull back the curtain." A ripple of gasps moved through the room. Connor's face palled because every person in that ballroom knew that a woman who spoke like that, calm, poised, unafraid, wasn't bluffing. Then someone whispered loudly enough for half the room to hear, "What does she have in that folder?" Every head turned, every breath hitched. Rowan stopped at the exact center of the ballroom. She placed one hand on the black folder, and the whispers snapped into absolute silence as she slowly began to open it, revealing the first glimpse of a document that could bring down the entire Hale Empire. For a heartbeat, the entire ballroom froze. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop shimmering as Rowan opened the black folder just wide enough for the closest guests to glimpse a line of text, an unmistakable line that sent a wave of unease spreading outward like ripples in a still lake. Marcus Lell, standing near the back, recognized it instantly. A financial statement, but not the glossy kind Hale Corporation used in press releases. This one was raw, internal, and damning. The kind of document no outsider was ever supposed to see. Connor saw it too. His breath hitched, his eyes widening with a panic he couldn't hide. He stepped forward quickly, voice pitched too high. "Rowan, stop. You don't know what you're doing." But the way he said it, the crack in his tone, the urgency told everyone in the room that she knew exactly what she was doing. Rowan didn't respond. She didn't need to. She slowly closed the folder again and held it at her side, showing she wasn't here to wave papers for drama. She was here with intention. Jade, desperate, jumped into the silence with a trembling laugh. "This is embarrassing," she said loudly, forcing a smile. "No one cares about some old paperwork. She's only doing this to ruin my engagement." A few people nodded politely, but it was weak. Forced? Everyone sensed the shift. No one in Manhattan cared about romance scandals at events like these. Affairs happened too often. What caught their attention was fear, and Connor Hale was radiating fear. Rowan took one step closer to the stage. "I didn't come here for you, Jade," she said, her voice calm and steady. "And I didn't come here for him either." Her gaze moved to Connor, who flinched as if struck. "I came here because there are people in this room who deserve to know what kind of deal they're celebrating tonight." Another ripple of whispers erupted. Investors exchanged uneasy glances. Board members stiffened. Reporters raised their phones higher. Marcus took a slow breath. Rowan was sharper, steadier, more composed than any boardroom veteran he'd seen. This wasn't a woman acting out of heartbreak. This was a woman who had been pushed too far and learned how to stand up. Connor clenched his jaw. "Rowan, don't do this." The desperation in his voice was unmistakable now. Rowan's eyes didn't waver. "Do you know what the worst part was, Connor?" she asked softly. "Not the lies, not the affair, not even the divorce." The entire room leaned in. "It was the way you tried to make me doubt my own sanity. You tried to erase me so no one would believe me when I found the truth." Jade looked confused. "What truth?" Rowan's smile was small, sad, and sharper than steel. "The truth you were never supposed to see," she said. "The truth. He destroyed his marriage to hide." A gasp spread through the room. Connor moved again, but Marcus stepped forward just enough that Connor hesitated. One wrong move, and the media would capture a scene he couldn't spin. Rowan lifted the folder slightly. Inside, it was the document that could unravel Hale Corporation's entire expansion deal. Proof of falsified asset reports, offshore transfers, and regulatory violations that could ruin not only Connor, but everyone who had invested in him. Jade's face drained of color. "What? What are you talking about?" she whispered. Rowan met her eyes with calm pity. "You didn't win, Jade. You were just the cover." Jade swayed, gripping the stage railing for balance. Connor's voice broke completely. "Rowan, don't." Rowan inhaled slowly, centering herself as hundreds of eyes locked onto her. Then she lifted the folder higher, because everyone in the room was about to learn exactly what Connor Hale had been hiding. And when she opened it, the first page made the crowd gasp loud enough to shake the chandeliers. When Rowan fully opened the folder, the page inside caught the ballroom lights like a blade. A sharp gasp cut through the silence as the first line became readable to anyone close enough. "Hale Corporation oversees asset redistribution report. Unfiled. Unfiled." A word that could sink an entire corporation. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just sloppy accounting. It was a violation. A serious one. Marcus felt the air shift instantly. Investors straightened. Board members squinted at the page. Even the orchestra stopped entirely. Bows hovering midair. Connor staggered down the last step of the stage, one hand raised as if he could physically stop Rowan's words from reaching the crowd. "You don't understand what you're holding," he hissed. Rowan didn't flinch. "I understand enough." Her voice cut through the room, steady, clean, undeniable. She lifted the page slightly so the front row could see. Lines of suspicious transfers, shell accounts, and undeclared overseas assets filled the page. The kind of thing companies hid when they were trying to inflate net worth before a merger. Rowan looked straight at the man who once vowed to spend his life with her. "You were moving millions into accounts that didn't exist on your official books." Murmurs exploded. A financier stepped forward. "Connor, is this real?" Connor forced a laugh. "Of course not. She's twisting something she doesn't understand." Rowan raised a brow. "You mean the document I printed directly from your office server at 2:00 the morning before you forced me out?" Connor froze. He knew she wasn't lying, and so did everyone else. A woman in a black cocktail dress whispered, "If this is true, the expansion deal is illegal." A man beside her added, "He could face federal charges." Jade, trembling, clung to Connor's arm. "Tell them it's fake. Tell them she's lying if you press us." But Jade's voice shook. She didn't believe her own words. Rowan held up a second page. This one shows the dates. Conveniently timed to right before you filed for divorce. Another gasp. Marcus watched Connor's face pale in real time. He'd seen CEOs crumble, but never this fast. Never this publicly. Connor's desperation sharpened. Rowan, you need to stop. You're making a fool of yourself. Rowan tilted her head. Funny. That's what you said the night you told your board I was unstable. D24, Connor stiffened, eyes darting around the room as if searching for an exit. But here's the part you forgot, Rowan said. You didn't just lie about me. You tried to erase the only person who knew what you were doing. She stepped closer, her voice lowering but carrying across the room. You wanted to destroy my credibility because you knew standing next to you. That night I saw the file names. I saw the transfers. I knew something was wrong. Jade blinked, confusion and fear mixing. Connor, what is she talking about? Connor didn't answer. His silence was louder than any denial. Rowan spread the pages out in her hands, making sure the cameras caught everything. You didn't count on me saving a copy. You didn't count on me understanding what I saw. And you certainly didn't count on Marcus Lell contacting me because he found the same discrepancies. Gasps. More cameras. A rising wave of panic. Connor spun toward Marcus. You're behind this. I do. Marcus remained perfectly calm. No, you're behind this. She just stopped you. More whispers. He's finished. This is bad. This is catastrophic. Connor lunged toward Rowan. Desperation. Breaking into something darker. But Marcus stepped between them so fast the crowd jolted. And in that split second, under the blinding lights and rising chaos, Rowan revealed a third page that made Connor's knees buckle. Chaos rippled through the ballroom like a shock wave. Investors rose from their chairs. Reporters surged forward, and the entire evening, carefully choreographed by Connor, began to unravel in slow, humiliating motion. The third page Rowan held up wasn't just damaging, it was lethal. It was a signed authorization. Connor's signature, beside a transfer amount large enough to raise flags at every federal office in the country. The signature alone could end his career, but the date could bury him because the authorization had been signed one day before he filed for divorce, meaning he had moved assets illegally while still married, and while Rowan was entitled to transparency under marital financial laws. Someone in the crowd gasped. That's fraud. Another muttered. This isn't just unethical. This is criminal. Connor's breathing turned shallow, his face drained to a sickly shade. For the first time in his polished career, he looked like a man realizing the ground beneath him was collapsing. Rowan let the page lower slightly, but her voice remained calm. You tried to make the world believe I was unstable, she said, but the only unstable thing in this room is your empire. People weren't whispering anymore. They were talking openly now. Loud, frantic, disbelieving. Jade clutched Connor's arm. Tell them it's fake. Tell them she forged it, Dax Rawson. But even as she spoke, she stared at the signature. She knew it was his. She'd watched him sign documents like that countless times. Connor's voice trembled. Rowan, please, not here. Not like this. Rowan swallowed, not out of doubt, but out of the weight of this moment. Years of manipulation, eraser, humiliation, finally breaking open into truth. I begged you to tell me the truth back then, she said quietly. You made me doubt everything. You turned people against me. You took my reputation, my work, my peace. Her voice gained strength, but you don't get to take my truth. Connor stepped closer, desperate. Rowan, listen, if you expose this, you'll hurt yourself too. Your name will be dragged through every headline. They'll say you helped. You knew you'll get caught in the fallout. Rowan let out a soft, humorless laugh. My name's already been dragged, and unlike you, I have nothing left to lose. If Marcus moved subtly behind her, not overshadowing her, simply standing in silent support, Connor noticed, and his panic sharpened. You teamed up with him? Connor spat. You think he cares about you? He's using you to bring me down. Marcus's jaw tightened, but Rowan spoke first. No, Marcus didn't ask me for anything. He gave me what you never did. Facts, respect, and a chance to clear my name. Connor's face contorted with something between fear and rage. Rowan, stop this. We can fix it. There's nothing to fix. Rowan cut in. This isn't about our marriage. This is about what you did, what you stole, what you hid. Her fingers tightened around the folder. And tonight, The right people will finally hear it. Connor's mask cracked entirely. He turned toward the crowd, stammering, "Please, everyone, this is blown out of proportion. She's emotional. She's twisting." But a board member interrupted sharply. "Connor, sit down before you make it worse." "None," a reporter called out. "Miss Miller, will you read the entire document aloud for the record?" Rowan hesitated for only a moment. Then she raised the document higher, and just as she parted her lips to speak, the ballroom doors burst open and someone unexpected stepped inside, shouting Rowan's name. The ballroom doors slammed open so forcefully that one of the security guards flinched. Conversations died instantly. Heads snapped toward the entrance like dominoes falling in one synchronized motion. A man in a charcoal suit strode inside, slightly out of breath, eyes searching the room with urgency. It took a moment for guests to recognize him, but when they did, gasps fluttered through the crowd. It was Daniel Reeve, the lead forensic auditor hired months earlier by Sterling Capital before mysteriously resigning, the same auditor who had been reviewing Hale Corporation's numbers before he suddenly vanished from the case. Rowan stiffened. She hadn't seen Daniel since before the divorce. She had no idea he was coming. He pushed past stunned onlookers until he reached Rowan. "I tried calling you," Daniel said, breathless. "I didn't think you'd actually confront him like this." Rowan blinked. "You're the one who sent me the thumb drive," Daniel nodded. "I couldn't let him get away with it. I knew he was building the expansion deal on illegal transfers. I knew he targeted you the moment you got too close to the truth." The crowd erupted again. Connor's jaw tightened. "Daniel, you were paid to stay silent." Daniel turned on him. "I was paid to audit your numbers. What I found was fraud." Connor's face twisted. "You signed the NDA," Daniel's voice rose, "and you violated federal asset reporting laws. NDA doesn't cover criminal behavior, if free." Reporters surged forward as if pulled by magnets. Rowan steadied her breath. The room was fully behind her now. Every eye, every camera, every whisper. Still, she lifted her chin and stepped into the center of the ballroom as if stepping onto a stage in a courtroom. She wasn't the ex-wife anymore. She was the witness. She looked at the crowd, then at the file, then back at Connor. "When my marriage ended, I thought the worst thing that happened to me was losing my home, my reputation, my stability." Her voice sharpened, but that wasn't the real betrayal. She took another step forward, facing Connor directly. "You tried to erase me because you knew I saw something you didn't want anyone else to see." Connor shook his head, sweating. "Rowan, stop this. You have no idea." "I have every idea," Rowan said. "I lived inside your lies for years, and tonight I'm done burying the truth." Gasps filled the room. Rowan opened the folder again, pulling out the third page, an internal memo with Connor's digital signature. She held it up for the cameras. "This document," she said slowly, "shows that Connor Hale knowingly misreported international asset values to inflate Hale Corporation's projected worth before the expansion deal. Millions hidden, millions moved, millions that should have been declared." She turned, her voice rising with each word. "And he did it while still married, while using my name on tax filings, while making sure any investigation would lead straight to me." Her voice cracked, but only from strength, not weakness. "He didn't just try to ruin me, he tried to make me the scapegoat." The crowd gasped louder this time. Jade looked horrified, stepping away from Connor as if he were contagious. "Connor, tell me she's lying. Tell me this isn't true." But Connor said nothing. His silence was damning. Marcus stepped closer, speaking calmly but firmly. "Rowan isn't exaggerating. I verified the numbers myself, and now that Daniel is here, there's enough evidence to trigger a federal inquiry by morning." The room exploded into chaos. Board members rushed toward each other. Investors shouted. Reporters sprinted for the exits to break the story first. Connor swayed on his feet. Rowan watched him, a strange mixture of grief and closure settling in her chest. He had chosen his path. Now he had to walk it. But just as she prepared to read the final damning line, Jade suddenly screamed, a sound that made everyone freeze in place. Jade's scream sliced through the ballroom like a lightning strike. Dozens of heads whipped toward her as she clutched the railing of the stage. Her breath shallow, her eyes wide with a terror no one understood yet. "Connor," she choked, pointing a trembling finger at the papers in Rowan's hands. "Tell me the truth. Tell me this doesn't affect the baby. I have won." Her voice cracked on the last word. For the first time since the chaos began, Rowan's expression softened, not with sympathy, but with a painful understanding. Jade wasn't innocent, but she was young, manipulated, and trapped in a situation far bigger than she imagined. The room quieted, waiting for Connor's response. Connor swallowed hard, sweat shining along his hairline. Jade, this has nothing to do with, don't lie to me, Jade shouted, her voice ringing off the marble pillars. You said everything was clean. You said the expansion deal was safe. You said the money was handled. She staggered slightly, forcing Connor to grab her elbow to steady her. A reporter muttered, "Handled? That sounds bad." Daniel stepped forward cautiously. "Jade, did you access any accounts for him? Did you move anything at his direction?" Jade hesitated. That single pause told everyone the answer. Marcus spoke carefully. "Jade, listen to me. If you transferred funds without knowing they were illegal, you're not liable. But if Connor used your name or your access..." Jade jerked her arm away from Connor as if he burned her. "You said it was temporary. You said it was just to smooth the transition." Connor's jaw clenched. "Jade, stop talking." Jade backed away, hands shaking. "You used me. You used my login. You told me the accounts were going to be flagged if we didn't move them fast enough. You told me." She broke off, covering her mouth. A fresh wave of shock rippled across the room. "He used her credentials," someone whispered. "That's witness tampering. That's manipulation." Rowan looked at Jade, really looked at her. A mixture of pity and gravity settled in Rowan's eyes. Jade wasn't the mastermind. She was a pawn. "Jade," Rowan said softly. "Did you sign anything he asked you to without reading it?" Jade's eyes filled with tears. "I signed whatever he gave me. He told me not to worry." Connor snapped. "Jade, enough." But Jade rounded on him, her voice breaking. "You told me I'd be safe. You promised the baby would be safe." Her panic shifted the entire room. Even those who despised her felt the sting of betrayal behind her words. Connor reached for her again, but she recoiled. "Stay away from me." For the first time, Connor halted. He wasn't controlling the narrative. He wasn't controlling Jade. He wasn't controlling anything. Marcus took a slow step toward Rowan and spoke under his breath. "This is turning into something bigger than fraud." Rowan nodded. She saw it, too. Connor hadn't just misreported assets. He had dragged an unsuspecting woman into his scheme. Used her access, her trust, her vulnerability. The crowd buzzed louder now, camera lights flickering like wildfire. Then Jade turned back to Rowan with red, trembling eyes. "You warned me," Jade whispered. "You tried to warn me during the divorce hearing and I ignored you." Rowan didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The truth was finally standing in the open, and everyone was seeing Connor Hale not as a visionary CEO, not as a powerful leader, but as a desperate man who used everyone around him to build a house of cards. A house now collapsing. Connor's breathing quickened. "Rowan, close that folder. We can end this quietly. I'll give you whatever you want." To being war, she looked at him with a calm, steadier than steel. "You already took everything," she said. "This is just the truth catching up." Connor lunged forward, and all at once, security rushed in, shouting for everyone to step back. Security rushed in as Connor lunged, their black suits moving like a coordinated wall between him and Rowan. The ballroom erupted into frantic noise, heels scraping marble, glasses shattering, guests backing away as if the scandal might stain them by proximity alone. "Stand down, sir," one guard ordered, blocking Connor with a firm arm. Connor's voice cracked with raw desperation. "She's lying. She's twisting everything. I didn't do anything wrong." But the tremor in his tone betrayed him. This wasn't confidence. This wasn't control. This was a man watching the identity he spent decades crafting fall apart in front of the city's elite. Jade sobbed into her hands. "You told me everything was legal. You said we'd be safe." If sitter, Connor spun toward her, eyes wild. "Jade, listen to me." But she shook her head violently. "You didn't just lie to Rowan. You lied to me. To our baby." Her words hit him harder than any accusation Rowan could make. Meanwhile, investors were on their phones. Frantic whispers filling the room like static. "Sell before the market opens. This could trigger a full audit. We need a crisis team now." The orchestra quietly slipped out, violins tucked away. Photographers swarmed closer, the flashing lights reflecting off the chandeliers in jagged bursts. Connor tried again to push through security, but the lead guard blocked him. "Sir, you need to step back. This is my event," Connor roared. "My company, My reputation. Marcus stepped forward, calm as ever, eyes cold. Not anymore. Connor froze. You, he spat. This is your doing. Marcus tilted his head. No, Connor. This is your doing. You built an empire on lies and thought no one would catch you. Rowan watched the exchange, her heartbeat steady now. She had spent months drowning in silence, in fear, in the weight of lies Connor planted around her. But tonight, she wasn't drowning. She was standing. Daniel moved beside Rowan, his voice low but firm. The documents are enough to trigger an immediate investigation. I'll confirm everything for the federal auditors. Honor's knees bent slightly, his posture collapsing. Daniel, you can't. You signed. Daniel cut him off. I signed before I knew you were dragging Rowan's name into it, before I knew you were using Jade's credentials. That voids every agreement. Connor's breath came fast and shallow. Rowan stepped forward, her voice soft enough that everyone leaned in to hear. You didn't just betray me, she said. You betrayed the people who trusted you. Your company, your investors, the mother of your child. Connor turned toward her, eyes bloodshot. I built everything for us. No, Rowan interrupted. You built everything for yourself, and you destroyed everything trying to protect the lie. Jade stared at him with a haunted expression. You never planned to marry me, did you? Connor opened his mouth, closed it. No answer came out because silence was the truth. A board member approached Marcus. If the documents are real, we need to suspend him immediately. Marcus nodded. Connor's head snapped toward them. Suspend me? You can't suspend me. Another board member stepped in. We can and we will. Connor's face twisted. Fear, anger, confusion, denial, all clashing in one painful expression. Then Rowan prepared to hand the folder to Daniel and Marcus, the official transfer of evidence. But before she could, Connor shouted, voice cracking in the most desperate way yet, Rowan, don't give them that. You don't understand what's really in those files. She paused. The room held its breath, and Connor, shaking, sweating, eyes wild, said the one sentence that made the entire ballroom fall silent again. There's something in those documents that will destroy more than just me. For a moment, no one moved. Connor's voice echoed against the golden walls of the ballroom, trembling with a fear deeper than anything Rowan had ever seen from him. Whatever he was hiding, whatever he thought would destroy more than just him, was pulling him apart from the inside. Marcus tightened his stance, eyes narrowing. Daniel frowned, clutching the evidence folder closer. Jade, pale and shaking, stared at Connor as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Rowan didn't flinch. What else is in these documents? Connor. Connor swallowed hard. You don't understand. If you hand those over, you won't just ruin me. You'll take down an entire chain of businesses, thousands of jobs, stockholders, families. You'll burn everything. His voice cracked. But maybe that's exactly what you want, isn't it? Rowan's jaw tightened. I don't want anyone hurt. I want the truth. Connor shook his head violently. You think this is about truth? This is bigger than you, bigger than us. If this leaks, the federal investigation won't stop with me. They'll dig into every partnership, every contract, every company connected to the expansion deal. A heavy silence fell. Some investors turned pale. One woman whispered, My firm is tied to Hale Corp's projections. Another muttered, If federal regulators open that door, we're done. Connor saw their panic and seized it. His voice grew stronger, fueled by desperation. She wants revenge. That's all. She doesn't care who she takes down with her. Rowan steadied her breath. If you're so concerned about the fallout, why did you falsify the documents in the first place? Connor winced as if struck. I didn't have a choice. One's eyes. Daniel snapped. Everyone always has a choice before they commit fraud. No, Connor barked. Not when someone else is pulling the strings. The crowd erupted into murmurs again. Marcus frowned. What does that mean? Connor's eyes darted around the room as if afraid someone was watching. You think I masterminded this alone? You think I? He cut himself off, chest rising and falling rapidly. Rowan took a step closer, voice steady. Who was working with you? Connor's hands trembled. His gaze shifted to the right side of the ballroom toward a table Rowan hadn't noticed earlier. A man in a navy suit sat there, arms crossed, face unreadable. His presence had been quiet, almost invisible until now. Marcus followed Connor's gaze. Is that Rowan? Whispered Gerald Vance. Gerald Vance, the CEO of Vance Holdings, Connor's silent investor, a man powerful enough to bury scandals under Manhattan's concrete if he wanted to. Gerald's eyes met Rowan's cold, calculating. Unmoved, Connor's voice dropped to a frantic whisper. He forced the asset transfers. He threatened to pull every dollar from the expansion unless I made the numbers look stronger. I didn't want to. I told him we'd get audited. Gerald lifted a single finger to adjust his cufflink. The gesture was small but menacing. Connor flinched like a man being hunted. Rowan stared at Gerald, shock washing over her. She'd always suspected Connor acted out of selfishness, greed, arrogance. But this was bigger. A web she never saw coming. Gerald finally spoke, his voice smooth as glass. "Mr. Hale, I would advise you to choose your next words very carefully." The room fell silent again. Connor backed away. "Don't you dare threaten me tonight. Not after everything I risked for you." Gerald didn't blink. "You acted alone." "No," Connor shouted. "I did what you told me. You made me." But he didn't finish because Gerald Vance slowly stood up from his chair, smoothing the front of his suit with deliberate calm, and every inch of the ballroom felt colder. Rowan looked between them, realization hitting her like a punch. This wasn't just Connor's secret, it was a conspiracy. And just as Gerald stepped forward, he said something that made the entire room gasp louder than ever before. For a long, breathless moment, Gerald Vance simply stood there, smoothing his sleeve with deliberate calm. The ballroom fell into a hush so deep Rowan could hear the faint hum of the chandeliers above them. Gerald was a man who rarely spoke in public, yet every word he uttered tonight would carry the weight of entire financial empires. He looked directly at Connor, cold, expressionless, utterly unbothered by the chaos unfolding around them. Then, with a voice steady enough to chill the room, Gerald said, "Mr. Hale, you acted independently. Any claims that I instructed or influenced your decisions will be considered defamatory." The words were measured, but the threat beneath them was unmistakable. Connor's mouth fell open. "Are you serious? You're going to abandon me now after everything?" Gerald didn't blink. "Your errors are your own. If you dragged Miss Miller or Miss Ellison into illegal activity, that only proves your recklessness." Rowan felt Jade tremble beside the stage. Daniel whispered under his breath. Classic corporate distancing. He's cutting ties to save himself. Marcus nodded grimly. "It won't work. Not tonight." But Connor broke. "You were the one who demanded the transfers," he shouted. "You said the expansion would fail if we didn't inflate the projected liquidity. You told me to hide the funds offshore." Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Gerald's jaw clenched slightly, the closest thing he had to an emotion. "I advise you to stop talking, Mr. Hale." "For your own sake." Connor laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. "My own sake. You made me do it. You said if I didn't cooperate, you'd pull funding and ruin me. You said you'd smear my name. You said you'd—" Gerald's voice hardened. "That is enough." But Connor was past listening. "You set me up," he screamed. "You used me. You used my company just like I used." He cut himself off abruptly, but too late. Every camera in the room was recording. Even security froze. Rowan stared at Gerald. For the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not fear exactly, but calculation. He hadn't expected Connor to completely unravel. He hadn't expected his name to be dragged into the center of a scandal this public. And Rowan realized something important. Gerald Vance wasn't invincible. He was cornered. Marcus stepped toward Gerald. "If you're innocent, you won't mind the authorities reviewing your communication logs with Mr. Hale. If we wanno—" Gerald stiffened barely but noticeably, Daniel added. "And the offshore accounts tied to your subsidiaries." A couple of board members exchanged uneasy glances. Connor pointed a shaking hand at Gerald. "You want to save yourself? Fine, but I have the messages. I saved everything. I kept receipts because I knew you'd throw me under the bus." Gerald slowly released a breath. "If you have anything, Mr. Hale, I suggest you keep it to yourself. Dragging me down will not save you." "In a well," Connor barked a humorless laugh. "Oh, I'm already drowning and I'm taking you with me." Rowan watched the two men, one unraveling, one tightening internally like a coiled wire, and she finally understood the full scale of the corruption she'd been dragged into. It wasn't just fraud. It was a chain of manipulation, fear, control, threats behind closed office doors, and she had been standing at the edge of it without ever knowing. Jade whispered shakily, What happens now?" But before Rowan could answer, Before Marcus or Daniel could step forward, before security could take control, Gerald Vance reached into his suit pocket slowly, deliberately. Several guests gasped, stepping back instinctively, but Gerald wasn't reaching for anything dangerous. He pulled out his phone, scrolled once, and with a small, chilling smile, he made a single call that changed the direction of the entire night. Gerald Vance lifted his phone with the calmness of a man who had survived far worse storms than this one. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He simply pressed the device to his ear and turned slightly away from the crowd as if taking a casual business call. But every person in the ballroom knew this was no ordinary call. This was the kind of call that could move markets, silence scandals, or destroy lives. "Activate the protocol," Gerald said quietly. 2 simple words, but they carried weight that made the room shiver. Connor blanched. "No, Gerald, don't do this. Don't you dare." Gerald didn't turn. "It's already done." Rowan exchanged a sharp look with Marcus. "Protocol? What does that mean?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "If I had to guess, he's triggering a corporate smokescreen. A distraction, a legal shield, something to bury evidence or manipulate public reaction." Daniel cursed under his breath. "He's covering his tracks. These are one." The lights above flickered for half a second almost unnoticeably before steadying again. But it was enough for Marcus to narrow his eyes. "He's accessing something," Marcus murmured. "Something digital. Something big." Meanwhile, Jade stepped back, clutching her stomach protectively. "What is happening? What is he doing?" Connor ran a hand through his hair, fingers trembling. He's trying to erase the records. If he wipes the servers, the documents Rowan has might be the only copies left." Daniel pressed the folder to his chest. "Then he won't succeed." But Gerald wasn't finished. He ended the call and turned to face them again, his expression calm, poised, perfectly relaxed. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you have one opportunity to correct your statement. Take responsibility. Say you acted alone. Do it now and perhaps your consequences will be andable." Connor stared at him, horror dawning. "You're framing me. You're actually framing me." Gerald's eyes carried a cold kind of finality. "I am preserving the stability of our financial ecosystem." Rowan felt a chill creep up her spine. Gerald had power. Not the dramatic kind Connor wielded with charm and arrogance, but the quiet kind, the dangerous kind, the sort that built and collapsed industries without making a sound. Marcus stepped forward, unflinching. "You're not untouchable, Vance. Even you can't bury an entire federal investigation." Gerald gave him a thin smile. "Mr. Lell, you underestimate how much people want their investments to survive." A tense silence fell. Rowan drew a steady breath. "So that's your plan? Destroy Connor to save yourself?" Gerald turned his gaze to her at last. "Miss Miller, I don't destroy men. I let them destroy themselves." Jade let out a broken laugh. "You're monsters, both of you." Gerald didn't even look offended. "I prefer the term realist." Connor's breathing grew rapid. "You can't do this. I have proof. Messages, emails, voice notes. I saved everything. If I go down, you go down with me." Gerald's expression didn't change. "Do you think anyone will believe you now?" Rowan saw Connor's face crumble as the truth hit him. He wasn't just losing control. He had already lost it. And the worst part, Gerald planned to walk out untouched. Marcus spoke, voice low. "Rowan, if Connor really has proof, you need to protect it before Gerald wipes everything." Daniel nodded urgently. "Where's the backup, Rowan? Where did you store the files I sent you?" Rowan hesitated. She hadn't told anyone. Not Daniel, not Marcus, not even her closest friend. Because the place she stored the full backup was the last place anyone would expect. A place Connor would never dare touch. A place Gerald couldn't reach. And as the room leaned in waiting, Rowan finally said where the real evidence was hidden. And the answer made Connor gasp out loud. Every gaze in the ballroom fixed on Rowan as if the fate of the entire night hinged on the words about to leave her lips. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. After months of silence, pain, and humiliation, Rowan finally had the power, not through revenge, but through truth. Connor whispered, voice cracking. "Rowan, where did you put the backup?" Gerald, for the first time, tensed. His fingers curled ever so slightly, the calm mask thinning at the edges. Rowan saw it. He wasn't afraid of Connor's panic. He was afraid of the unknown, of losing control of the narrative he thought he orchestrated. So Rowan spoke clearly. her voice carrying through the golden ballroom. "The full backup," she said, "is locked in a private safety deposit box under my maiden name." And a fest, Connor's face drained instantly. "No, no, no, Rowan. Tell me you didn't put it there." Jade frowned, confused. "Why is that bad?" Marcus answered for her. "Because safety deposit boxes under independent identities can't be accessed by corporations or by subpoenas without judicial approval." Daniel nodded firmly. "And anything stored there is time-stamped the moment it's deposited, meaning it's legally protected, meaning the evidence is authenticated." Ava and Rowan added calmly, "meaning Gerald can't erase it." A murmur swept across the room, relief from some, dread from others. Gerald's expression stayed eerily composed, but Rowan caught the flicker of irritation behind his eyes. It was subtle but real. He hadn't expected her to be smart enough or strategic enough to protect the evidence at that level. "Miss Miller," he said smoothly, "you understand that releasing that information could cause widespread damage. Innocent people may suffer." One Dev Rowan didn't waver. "Innocent people are already suffering. They just suffer quietly while men like you profit." Connor stepped forward, voice trembling. "Rowan, please. If that information goes public, Hale Corporation will collapse. Hundreds will lose their jobs. Families will fall apart." Rowan turned to him, her expression steady. "And whose fault is that? The woman you blamed, the woman you humiliated, or the leaders who chose fraud over honesty?" Connor's lips trembled. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Rowan exhaled softly. "Not forgiveness, but acceptance. You meant for me to disappear," she said. "You didn't care what happened to anyone else." Marcus stepped closer, his presence calm, grounding. "Rowan is not responsible for the consequences of your crimes," Daniel added, "and the investigators will determine who else was involved." Connor looked like a man unraveling from the inside out. "You don't understand, Gerald, and I weren't the only ones tied to this. If the documents are opened, it will expose Connor." Gerald's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Choose your next words wisely." But Connor was beyond saving. He stared at Rowan, broken. "You think exposing this will free you? You think it will give you your life back? It won't. It will drag you into a war that you're not built for." Rowan stepped forward until she was standing only a few feet away. "You already dragged me into that war," she said softly. "You just didn't expect me to survive it." The ballroom felt utterly silent. Gerald watched her with cold calculation. Connor watched her with fear. Jade watched her with painful understanding. And the crowd watched her with awe. Rowan stood taller, stronger, untouchable. Then Marcus leaned slightly toward her, voice low but firm enough for the nearest guests to hear. "Rowan, it's time. You need to hand the folder to Daniel now." "As no." She nodded once, but just as she extended her hand, someone in the crowd stepped forward, shouting that Rowan's deposit box had already been breached. The moment the voice shouted from the crowd, "Rowan, your deposit box was breached," the ballroom erupted into a wave of panic, so immediate it felt like the air had cracked. Rowan froze mid-motion, her hand still hovering above the folder, as every heartbeat in the room seemed to stop. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible. They can't access it without my ID, my signature." But before she could finish, the person who stepped forward came fully into view. A middle-aged woman in a Navy uniform, her nameplate reading Hartley & Sons Private Vaults. Her presence alone sent a chill down Rowan's spine. "I'm so sorry," the woman said, trembling. "Your box wasn't breached. It was flagged." Rowan blinked. "Flagged?" The woman nodded quickly. "Earlier this evening, our system received an automatic federal freeze request on your box. We can't legally open it, and we can't legally remove anything from it. Not you, not us, not anyone." A stunned silence spread. Daniel stepped closer. "A federal freeze? That only happens when an investigation is triggered." Marcus finished grimly. "Gerald's call." Gerald's expression didn't falter. He simply folded his hands behind his back as if observing a lecture. "I warned you, Miss Miller. Some truths are too dangerous to expose." But Rowan wasn't listening to him anymore. She was trying to breathe, trying to understand, trying to piece together the implications. "So, the evidence is still there," she said slowly. "But I can't access it." "No one can," the woman confirmed. "Not until a federal officer oversees the process." Connor let out a strangled laugh. "See? It's over. You can't do anything without proving authenticity. And those pages you have are just copies. You need the originals." Marcus turned sharply. "Careful, Connor. You're assuming she didn't think ahead. Rowan steadied herself, grounding her thoughts. The freeze doesn't erase anything, it protects it. Gerald lifted an eyebrow. You believe that? I know that, Rowan said firmly. Federal freezes timestamp every item. It proves the documents were stored long before tonight. That's more than enough. Murmurs spread again, some fearful, some relieved, some astonished. But Gerald remained unfazed. Even so, Miss Miller, you've caused more chaos tonight than you understand. Hale Corporation stock will plummet by morning. When it collapses, thousands will blame you. I'm not the one who committed fraud, Rowan replied. Gerald's voice hardened. Truth doesn't matter when panic takes over. Connor nodded desperately. He's right. You'll get dragged into this with me. People will say you destabilized the expansion. You destroyed the company. They'll make you the face of the scandal. But Rowan didn't flinch. For months, you made me the face of lies, she said. If people finally see the truth, that's not my burden. That's justice, Daniel added. And she won't be alone. I'll testify. I'll turn over every report. I've kept a secure backup, too. Gerald's eyes narrowed. You took evidence? Daniel didn't blink. I took my job seriously. The shift in the room was immediate. For the first time since the night began, fear flickered in Gerald's eyes. Rowan exhaled, holding the folder tightly. This ends tonight. The investigators will take it from here. Connor shook his head violently. No, you don't get it. Without the originals in your hands, we still win, Marcus said, because the originals are protected by federal seal. Connor looked ready to collapse. Rowan turned toward Marcus and Daniel. We need to leave. We need to get this to the authorities before anyone else tries to interfere. Daniel nodded. Marcus stepped closer, subtly shielding Rowan from the crowd. But just as they prepared to walk out, the ballroom doors swung open once more. This time, it wasn't chaos. It was authority. Badges, federal jackets, stern faces. The federal task force had arrived and the lead officer stepped forward, eyes fixed on Rowan as he said, Miss Miller, we need to speak with you immediately alone. I am Stan. The ballroom went silent as the federal task force stepped inside. Their dark jackets contrasted sharply with the shimmering chandeliers and gold-trimmed walls, turning the glamorous event into something that felt more like the opening scene of a high-profile investigation. Miss Rowan Miller, the lead officer repeated. We need to speak with you. Please come with us. Rowan's pulse jumped, but her voice remained steady. Of course, I court. Marcus moved instinctively, stepping between her and the officers. She's not under arrest. You need to clarify your intention before taking her anywhere, Daniel added quickly. And she's a material witness. Federal law protects her from coercive separation. The officer nodded. We're not arresting her. We're requesting her cooperation for immediate questioning. She's the whistleblower, the first responder to this evidence. We need her statement before anyone else alters the narrative. Think. BR. Connor stumbled forward, eyes wild. You can't take her. Not without questioning me first. I'm the CEO. The officer barely glanced at him. Sir, you'll be questioned in due time. Jade held onto the stage railing, staring at Connor as though seeing a stranger. They're not taking you first because they think you're guilty, she whispered. They're taking her because she's the one telling the truth. Connor froze. The officer turned back to Rowan. Miss Miller, we need to secure the documents in your possession. Rowan held the folder tighter. These stay with me until I hand them over to the federal investigator assigned to the case. That investigator, the officer replied calmly, is waiting outside. Rowan hesitated. It wasn't fear, it was instinct. She had spent months being betrayed, silenced, cornered. Stepping into another room alone felt like stepping into the unknown again. Marcus saw it. He leaned close. Rowan, you don't have to do this alone. Ask for representation. Ask for protection. Use your voice. Daniel nodded. And don't hand over anything until they log it officially. Chain of custody matters. The officer watched them surprisingly patient. Miss Miller, you may choose one person to accompany you as a support witness. Rowan blinked. She hadn't expected that. Connor stepped forward immediately. Take me. I can explain everything. Rowan didn't even look at him. Her eyes were already turning toward Marcus. But before she could speak, Jade whispered, Take Marcus. He's the only one in this room who hasn't tried to use you. For the first time that night, Rowan saw clarity in Jade's gaze. Not innocence, not malice, just the fractured realization of someone who had finally seen the truth. Rowan nodded gently at her, then turned back to the officer. I choose Marcus Lell. Connor's face shattered. Rowan, don't do this. You know what this means. If you go with him, the public will think Rowan cut him off with a calm he no longer recognized. The public already thinks everything you told them to. The officer gestured toward the door. This way, Miss Miller. As the crowd parted, Rowan walked through the ballroom with Marcus beside her. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. Jade leaned against the stage, crying silently. Connor sank to his knees as his empire crumbled around him. At the doorway, the lead officer leaned toward Rowan. Miss Miller, before we continue, I need to notify you. The freeze on your safety deposit box was triggered because of something we found earlier today. Rowan stiffened. Something you found? The officer nodded. Yes, we discovered a duplicate set of documents identical to the ones in your possession submitted anonymously to our office this morning. Marcus's eyes widened. Anonymous? Who would? Rowan's breath caught as realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. Someone else knew. Someone else had protected her. Someone who wasn't in the room anymore. The officer continued. We have reason to believe the anonymous source was inside Hale Corporation. Rowan's heart pounded. Inside Hale Corporation? Who? Why? And then the officer added, Miss Miller, the anonymous whistleblower left a note, and it has your name on it, as everyone. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter, but Rowan could still hear the echo of chaos behind her, the crumble of Connor's empire, the gasps of Manhattan's elite, the sound of truth finally breaking through years of carefully crafted lies. The federal investigator stood waiting, a sealed envelope in hand. This is the note, he said, offering it to Rowan. We need you to read it. Rowan hesitated only a second before she opened it. The handwriting inside was neat, deliberate, and painfully familiar. Rowan, I couldn't let him destroy you. You deserved better than what he tried to turn you into. A friend you never knew you had. She exhaled sharply, stunned. Marcus leaned closer. Do you recognize the handwriting? Rowan nodded slowly. Yes, it belonged to Lisa, Connor's former executive assistant. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. She's the one who quit right after the divorce was finalized. Rowan nodded again. She saw everything. She tried to warn me once, but I didn't understand. I thought she was trying to comfort me. I didn't know she had the proof. The investigator closed his notebook. The anonymous submission confirms every detail you provided tonight. Miss Miller, you've not only cleared your name, you've protected hundreds of people from further corruption. Rowan's throat tightened. After months of drowning in doubt, the simple truth felt unreal. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, not possessive, not demanding, simply supportive. It's over, Rowan. You did it. But Rowan shook her head softly. No, we did it. All of us who refused to stay silent inside the ballroom. Raised voices echoed again. This time, Rowan didn't turn back. She didn't need to. She already knew what was happening. Connor was being escorted by federal officers, pale and shaking. Gerald was surrounded by investigators demanding access to his financial logs. Jade stood alone, wiping silent tears. Not for Connor, but for the illusion that finally shattered. Rowan closed her eyes briefly. She didn't celebrate their downfall. She didn't need to. Life had a way of balancing itself. When truth finally came to light, the investigator cleared his throat. Miss Miller, we'll need ongoing statements from you, but tonight you're free to go. Free? The word wrapped around her like warm light. She stepped out into the cold Manhattan night with Marcus beside her. Traffic hummed along Fifth Avenue. Snow drifted lazily under glowing street lamps. For the first time in months, Rowan felt air fill her lungs without weight. You know, Marcus said quietly, when you walked into that ballroom tonight, I've never seen anyone so brave. Rowan smiled. Not the broken smile she once carried, but something lighter. I wasn't brave. I was tired of being silent. Is a very dear. That, Marcus replied gently, is the definition of brave. They walked toward the curb where a black sedan waited. For a moment, Rowan paused, looking up at the glittering skyline Manhattan, standing tall, unshaken, timeless, a new beginning, a life she built herself. Before she stepped into the car, Marcus spoke again. Rowan, I don't want to overstep, but whenever you're ready, whether it's tomorrow or a year from now, I'd like to stay in your life. Not as someone who needs something from you, but someone who believes in you." Rowan didn't rush to answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she met his eyes with a quiet certainty. "Then stay," she said softly. "Just as you are." Behind her, Hale Corporation fell. Ahead of her, a new chapter opened. Clean, honest, hers. And with that, Rowan Miller stepped into her future, finally free, finally believed, and finally standing exactly where she deserved to be. Rowan's story did not end with revenge. It ended with truth. Connor had spent years building his success on lies, believing power could silence anyone he betrayed. But truth does not remain buried forever. It rises quietly, steadily, and often at the exact moment arrogance feels safest. Rowan never needed to destroy him. She only needed to stop hiding. She walked into that ballroom with dignity, her children beside her, and allowed the truth to speak for itself. The man who once called her unstable and unworthy was exposed before the same people he had convinced to reject her. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Connor ignored both principles, and eventually his own choices became his punishment. Rowan lived by them, even when honesty cost her everything, and that integrity became the foundation of her new life. Her journey reminds us that strength does not always shout. Sometimes it enters the room calmly, stands beneath the light, and refuses to be ashamed any longer. You do not have to become cruel to defeat cruelty. You do not have to fight dishonestly to reclaim your life. Stay grounded in truth, protect your dignity, and allow time to reveal what manipulation tried to hide. Rowan was never the broken woman Connor described. She was simply waiting for the world to learn who she truly was.